Welcome back to Wickerson Studios. Michael Wickerson here, and just showing an example of why AI is going to jazz up your Python scripts or C# scripts from the get-go. So as we move from curves, from point objects to single objects, over to multiple objects, we could have done that with a range node, which I talked about in the last video, but what I'd rather do is just put this through this kind of oscillation formula. And actually, all it's really doing is running the script again and again and again, and it's randomly choosing different amount of points. So I can grab 12 points, I can grab 5 points, I can grab whatever. But what's nice about this component is when I take a look at what I've actually done, the script itself is something that might have slowed people down. People probably could have done it multiple points in Rhino statically. They probably could have done it parametrically in Grasshopper. But to get into a for loop right off the bat, you realize that so much of the work, if you go back to the points and just deal in for loops and deal properly in lists and proper outputs, I didn't have to write this in the C# node. So because of the other component that I have going on here, which is the script Parasite, as long as it's set to true and I have a file to take it to, I can open that file up over in Visual Studio, and because of GitHub Copilot, I literally just had to type create a random list of points, and that's what I'll do again. Create a random list of points, of multiple points, and wait for it. It creates its list, and it creates a new random variable, and it generates the for loop for myself. So save that. Immediately after saving that, it's going to save over to my C# script. I can run it from there, and there it is, do-si-doing and dancing away and doing its little wonderfulness. Now it did reset to a very small number, so let me just kind of pull that out, and I have to wonder why, what generated differently than what was there before. That's interesting. I'm trying to think if I did something different in here. New point XYZ. My oscillations should be working. Just let me check the scale again. And I had it there, there, and there. Going to take off my oscillations. It just seems a bit smaller than I had before. I thought I had number of points. Thought I had it more particularly large. Anyhow, it was running a little larger than before. But let's bring in my algorithm again, get it up and running. And I think it just chose this time. I actually think it just chose a smaller range of what was happening. So it did write a different script. Let's go back and see what the other script was. The other script was the first time I did it. Now this was it. And let's run it again. And there you go. So it must have changed just slightly the scale of it. So let me go back in and see what decisions it made differently. Number points. Maybe I had to put my input in and it defaulted. So I had 9. Yeah. I'm not sure if the scale had been adjusted. But anytime you're doing any work there, you've got to do a little bit of play. And all I've done is just brought these points out, which are here. I can bypass this, take this preview off, and you'll see we're really just randomly picking points. We're picking whatever, 9 points this time. I can pick more, I can pick less, and it's a wonderful little script. And it is using AI because even though I could have generated this from static in Rhino, or I could have come here and done it parametrically in Grasshopper, I could have tried to work with ranges and do a bunch of work here, but to pack it into a C# node and have the GitHub Copilot running because of the C# Parasite, I can go in here and let me just open that Visual Studio again. I think it was good to go. There it is. There's the script that's running, and that should be fine. All right. And so that said, then you start getting some point control. And because I've done my oscillation, which I find fun, it's a very simple oscillation script. I kind of keep it pretty simple. I reset it. You can run it at different speeds if you want. If you want it to only generate every couple of 100 milliseconds, that's fine. Let's put it on. Let's reset it. There we go. And we're choosing less points. But really, you've just made a point node that you've customized, and instead of generating a single point node from XYZ, you've actually gone into C# and done some things with it through a for loop, which is basically like dealing in a range and a series. So you start to see those components over here in the sequence, the range and series, the way they're scripted, and then you can change your inputs as long as you know how to put the types and put the access, then you can output as many things as you want. And what you'll end up doing is starting to pack this interpolated script back into here. But the way I've practiced is, because I'm pretty good at Grasshopper, most people like to kind of visualize different components as they come out. I'm trying to make my components do very simple things and really only be point tools. But as we run through the curve and get past the point objects, well, there's plenty to play with. There's plenty of point clouds to play with. And then line's going to get really interesting immediately. And when you start bringing in deductive geometry and Euclidean geometry, you're going to realize there's nothing you can't do creatively. So I'm really looking at the works of people like Paul Klee or Kandinsky to drive the geometries I might want to end up doing. So I'm just going to grab this geometry and put it in here. And then as we generate these kind of cool forms, I'll put that to visual. If I click it, I should be able to make a preview on. Now it's interesting that it's not seeing that. There it is. It's seeing that. So I can hold down the button and start to make some pretty cool geometries. And this is probably not how you were modeling in Rhino when you started in Rhino. You probably started with something static. You thought, well, I want to build something that's kind of interesting. But here, you can literally get in here and change up whatever you want. So if I wanted something to articulate a lot better, to 12, and let's get rid of this because we weren't happy with how we had modeled, we could sit here and we could make another form. And if we find that's too much geometry as to what we're doing, we can go back down here and we can pull our count way down to like 2 points or 3 points, which gives us these kind of curves. 2 points will be a straight line if it even generates anything. But I think 6 looks pretty nice as a nice number. And then we'll go back in, and the number of sides, I may as well put that back down to 6 or 7. So we're dealing in hexagons. And then let's bake that and see what we can get as a wonderful geometry. These aren't capped, but of course you can always put your caps on here. And you can join them as a true as well. It might slow your script down a little bit, but as long as your Markov profiler is on, you can see how fast your scripts are running. And if you want to actually just bake this and go on a timely fashion without having to make it manual, just put it to true as a Boolean toggle and start baking your form. And then jump in here with something like pen and ink and start taking a look at the drawings you're making. So wonderful, wonderful way to automate and start thinking about how to fabricate things and build geometries that you maybe never thought of before. And all I've tapped into is a little bit of artificial intelligence, because instead of going in and having to look at the Rhino common documentation, I can write what I want it to do and watch these scripts develop. And they're going to be pretty wild. You know my interest in ghpython and the libraries and pulling data from CSV files and Excel documents. I've gone down all those paths, but I think I'm a kind of builder. I like Foundry, I like metal casting, so obviously this is something to fabricate, and it makes a lot of sense to me. So let's just keep going with this series. I'll be dropping these on a private GitHub repo. Not that you really need it because the development's so simple, but pretty excited about this. Stop streaming and stop recording.